Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Banking on Experience. Really excited about today's topic because it's super fun. We're going to be talking about the 80s, which is near and dear to my heart, and what it can teach us about marketing and how to serve our members and our customers better. So stay tuned on this episode of Banking on Experience. Hey, all of our listeners, thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to have our guest, Cynthia Kolko. Cynthia, give us a quick intro, who you are, what credit union you work for, and why we chose this topic to talk about.
All right. Well, I'm a writer and PR person at the Summit Federal Credit Union based out of Rochester, New York. We operate in Western New York and Central New York. We've got about 88,000 members. 16 branches and about $1 billion in assets. Pretty big credit union, even for New York State.
Love it. Cynthia, the audience might not know this, but you are a blogger on CUInsight. And well, you wrote an article not too long ago. And that's actually why we started talking, is because I loved it. If you haven't read it yet, it's on CUInsight. It's called 5 Credit Union Marketing Tips Inspired by 80s Heavy Metal. Now, heavy metal today is much different than it was in the 80s. But what I love is your specific comparisons to some of the bands that existed back there. So let's actually talk just high level about this article a little bit. Like, what inspired you to do this?
Well, you know what? I mean, I'm a little bit of a kook. You know, I like to I like to think of kind of offbeat ways to illustrate what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to impart. So I was just thinking of a creative way to put out some of those marketing concepts, especially as they relate to credit unions. Well, I've got a friend who's really into this kind of music. I would say hair bands, but he would bristle at that, you know, because he's much too serious about it. And I've gotten to know the genre more through him. I have a confession to make that I was sort of more, in the 80s, I was more of a new wave fan, let's say, than a heavy metal fan, although I didn't dislike it. I liked it, certainly. And I watched enough MTV. I didn't click it off or anything. So I thought it was a good premise to just as a foray into those concepts.
Yeah, I love it because you picked specific songs by the Scorpions. You picked one by Judas Priest, Whitesnake, Def Leppard, Skid Row. Here's a little secret sauce about me. I have historically not listened to 80s bands like this either. But my wife, that's a different story. If we get in the truck or wherever we're going and it's got to be 80s all day, every day. And we play the guess game, right? So when like an 80s song comes on, she always says, guess who this is, right? Like, name that tune. I get it wrong 100% of the time. But I truly appreciate 80s music. And again, even though this was considered heavy metal back then, it's not today. It's more like these are classics, right?
Yeah, some of them are really kind of, you know, I like to call this genre grilled cheese, because it's a little cheesy, you know, but it's got that edge, you know, that sort of burnt edge. So,
but I love the concept of taking something and trying to be creative with it, because I think this is a big struggle for marketing just in general. If we look at it as just an industry, I think one of the biggest struggles is being creative with your approach and being able to articulate something that is new and fresh to an audience. And we all know that historically credit unions have served a little bit of an older audience, right? And now they're trying to get Gen Z, Gen Y, even millennials, right? And when you really look at that and you're trying to get that younger audience, these are the things that really work because it's nostalgia, right? It's the fun stuff that I think that an audience can relate to. A really good example of this, you know, that I really loved was Stranger Things when that came out. I mean, the nostalgia that existed there was all in the 80s and 90s. And it was just so...
Yeah, they got it so on, you know, with the T-shirts and stuff. I only saw, I think, maybe 1.5 episodes. But yeah, I can appreciate what you're talking about.
So let's talk about that. I mean, there's some big challenges that credit unions just in general face when trying to connect with their members. What are some of those big challenges that you feel like credit unions face right now?
Well, first of all, you want to make yourself different from not so much other credit unions, but other financial institutions. You want to show why are credit unions a good choice for people, and doing that in a positive way, obviously. There are misperceptions that need to be overcome. And you do want to connect with people on a human level. I mean, that's kind of what credit unions do so well. And imparting that, especially when you can't really be face-to-face with people, is difficult. But you have to try to find those touch points and earn some space in their memory, is what I like to say, so that maybe if they're not ready to switch to you or ready to get some products from you, they'll remember you when they are. And so you want things to be splashy enough, not in a ridiculous way, but in a way that resonates with them.
Yeah, I completely agree. There was a campaign that we ran 2 companies ago before this stint that I'm in right now. And we ran bringing back the 90s. So we actually had our entire booth at an event and conference that was all 90s themed, kind of like Saved by the Bell. But we also had our sales reps dress up as like 90s personas. And one of our sales reps dressed up as MC Hammer. And I'm telling you, like it was marketing gold, because we had to do a lot less with what we had to push out as far as budget goes. And we just tried to have fun with it. And I think sometimes we can get away from that fun. We think we have these numbers to hit, so we just have to continually, go through this hamster wheel of stuff that we think we have to do. But ultimately, if we just take a step back and, to your point, be human about it, it's making those connections where we bring people back some of the nostalgia of their childhood and maybe their teenage years. Like, that's stuff that is marketing gold. And I love the fact that you took this approach with your CUInsight article, because I think that there's things that we can learn from those eras.
Yeah, I think so too. But like you were just talking about, we do a lot of events, or we did before COVID, and we probably will again, I imagine, where we're on site and we support a community organization when we do this. And one of these was a country music concert, and we all wore cowboy hats, that we had at the summit on. It was just a point of connection there. It was easy to do, and it makes us approachable.
Let's talk about this a little bit during the pandemic, because I know that's made the life of everyone a little bit unique right now. What can credit unions and financial institutions do in today's world to kind of bring some of that nostalgia back? Like, we don't necessarily have to focus necessarily just on the 80s, but how can they translate this to the pandemic in a virtual world?
Well, the things that you do in social media can bring it in. You can use all kinds of contests or invitations to post things, the special days, maybe not nostalgia so much, but the special International Dog Day and so on. And you can connect with people that way. But it's a way to let people sort of into your culture that way. And there are other ways to kind of connect with what's going on as far as pop culture goes. If you can just bring a little something into your messaging that connects with people of a certain generation or a certain place in their life, then I think that's something that's really good.
Yeah, and to your point, from the perspective of the generations, right? You really have to do it in a very unique way. Like, you have to almost think of them, me as a marketer, I think of them as almost like a persona. You have a persona of millennials, you have a persona of Gen Y and Gen Z, and the approach that you take with them is completely unique, right? Unfortunately, even though TikTok is getting a bad rap right now, I mean, that's where Gen Z lives.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if
teenagers, yeah.
you know this, right? So, I mean, if you're a financial institution and you don't have a play for TikTok and you're not in there, I mean, there's a good possibility that TikTok might get bought out, right, by an American company, which means it's going to stay. And if it stays, then that's a primary strategy that's going to happen for Gen Z and Gen Y moving forward. And I think, to your point, you have to play in the area of your audience and to that persona. So, playing off of the 80s and 90s themes, that's going to serve millennials right now, right?
I think it does.
But playing off of 2000s, which is a whole different realm, right? And then,
if you're not familiar with it, I mean, you have to know that you can ask people. I mean, you can find out anything you want, and you could get ideas from all kinds of places, all kinds of people. We sponsor a small theater, a small art center, which is in a town next to a town where we have a branch in Cortland, New York. And they have people like, let's say, Ace Frehley might come, not the whole band Kiss, but, one guy. And so they have a screen that they have in the lobby, a big screen. So when people are waiting there for the auditorium doors to open, they can see this screen. And so we have these screens put up there. And so they had the Allman Betts Band there. And so we were running a campaign to use your HELOC in order to get some money to get your debts down. And so we said, like Allman Betts Band, dislike all my debts, man, because the audience was, I asked the guy at the who runs this theater, what's the audience like? And they were kind of old hippie types. So we tailored it to them. And we did the same thing with Graham Nash. Everybody, look what's going down. The rates were going down. You just sort of tailor it to the audience a little, and they think, but they remember you because of that.
Yep, it's the little things that really matter. I got to ask. So in your article, and I only know this because of my wife, but why not Guns N' Roses?
Well, I don't know. I had to keep it at a certain length. I thought that these titles and these concepts sort of lended themselves more to adapting to the marketing world. I guess I could have Sweet Child of Mine. I don't know how I could have really.
I was actually
the jungle, maybe.
I was thinking Paradise City, right? Because community-wise, credit unions are trying to build a paradise in their community, right? They're trying to build that for their members. And I just was, by the way, I'm totally messing around with you.
Maybe the next time. City's a good one. No, that's good.
Yeah, but that's a great example of like doing it on the fly. Like it doesn't take a lot of thought and effort. It's just a matter of taking an idea and just simplifying it to the point where, all right, well, I mean, look, credit unions are all about community. So how can we make it more like that? And I've seen some credit unions that have done this really, really well, but I'd like to hear from your perspective of a few examples, maybe if it's even your own credit union, you've given some of them, but what are some other good examples of credit unions that are doing this really, really well?
Well, I can talk about us a little more. We do try to bring the community in a lot of ways. When we do these events, we have a community component always. Like you said that you guys turned your tent, your booth into a 90s throwback. We turned ours into almost a little bit like our carnival, and we raised money for some local organizations. And it makes people feel invested in you and that you're invested in the community. And it becomes about them and where they live. There's a very popular festival in Syracuse. It's called Taste of Syracuse. And we were looking for a festival that we could kind of become part of. And so we found that. And when we had an opportunity to be the title sponsor of it, we jumped at it. And it showed the community there in Central New York that we are very invested in them, in their small businesses, because it's all about their own local restaurants having booths and local small businesses and those organizations. So that I think that works really well. We always raise a lot of money. They get 225,000 people there over a weekend. It's very popular. By connecting ourselves with an established festival, I think it really let us get into the hearts of the people who enjoy the festival.
And by the way, even though this is like a physical event play, the same kind of thing could be done virtually. That should be mentioned. Like you really can translate a physical event pretty well virtually if you do it right? I mean, to your point earlier when you were talking about wearing country hats and cowboy hats, like I know that there's a lot of credit unions out there that their personas are that, right? Like the country music world. And that's something that, you can do pretty amazing job doing that virtually.
Oh, yeah.
Playing the music in the background. I mean, I thought about on this podcast actually bringing in some of the 80s music, but I wanted to be careful for copyright reasons. But but nonetheless, like,
you can sing it if you want.
Yeah, you really can though. Like there's so many different things that you can bring into the realm of what's happening right now and in the digital world with everybody working from home. And I think that, again, to your point earlier, social media is going to be a very, very important marketing strategy, even more than it ever has been, especially now. That's where everyone lives right now, right? And we've got to be able to figure out ways in which we can incorporate some of that strategy. So without breaking it down, like your secret sauce at your credit union, without breaking it down too much, let's keep it high level. But what do you think credit unions can do to leverage social media to do this better than they are today?
I think you can really use social media to connect with people in sort of a personal way. You know, this is one person talking to you, but it's really one person responding. You know, if there's an interaction, if they can post something and you respond to that post. We recently had a promo called Nailed It, and we did it with a Syracuse radio station, and it was a home improvement promo because a lot of people are home now. They're looking around. They see that, oh my gosh, the ceiling doesn't look so good. You know, I'd really like to redo that bathroom over there. And so we had this promo where people would post a picture of their home improvement, or if they didn't have a home improvement project, then they could still enter the contest. And then we picked somebody at random and they won a $500 gift card. But it was a way to connect with people and also talk about our HELOC promo that we had, where people can get cash to improve their homes, among other things. But it was a good way to tie in a product and to connect with people where they are today and use social media for that. I mean, it was really, although it was a radio station promo and there were a lot of mentions on radio, from our perspective, from the Summer's perspective, we mostly did the promotion on social media.
Love it. And there's nothing wrong with radio. Radio is a great channel to use for credit unions, especially since it's so community focused. When you have a national reach or even an international reach, it's a little bit more difficult to use radio, but still for credit unions specifically, it's very, very, very good. You know, it's interesting you bring up a campaign that you guys ran called Nailed It. And I don't think this might be the first time in the podcast's history where I'm going to talk about a CRMNEXT thing that we're doing right now, but I think it's actually really relevant. We don't typically like to sell our product in our marketing materials. We don't typically like to even talk about it because we believe in bringing value first. And like even in some of the webinars that people have attended, they ask us like, why aren't you showing your product? Why aren't you talking about your product? We don't, because we don't think that that's where the value is. The value is us gaining the trust of everyone that's involved and helping them understand that we're part of the community with you. And one of the campaigns that we're running right now, I'll talk to you more about this after, but everybody knows this. We're running this Right on the Money contest. And people are wondering, like, well, what is this about? And it's very similar, but as a contest. However, people can nominate other credit unions and they can nominate other financial institutions. And it's completely third party. So we brought in judges that are going to judge it. And we're going to allow the audience to kind of recognize the good work that credit unions are doing. And this is a play on a very similar method, but it's not necessarily bringing in nostalgia, but it's an area in which you can do this in your community, just like you just mentioned, very, very easily, bringing in like an audience that truly it can be recognized. You have to provide the value there. And I think that that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed doing so far at CRMNEXT is being able to be a part of this contest and bringing it to life. Is because we just want people to be recognized for the great work that credit unions are doing. And it's really tough to do that right now because most people aren't talking about the fact that credit unions and financial institutions are keeping our economy afloat right now. They're the people that have lost their jobs. I mean, guess who's keeping them alive right now? It's the financial institutions. And we saw that and we're like, look, can we solve that for everyone? No. But what we can do is we can at least provide an avenue for somebody to come in and be recognized for the amazing work that they're doing. And then we can take that and we can promote the heck out of those credit unions that are doing an incredible job and that the judges have voted and their peers have voted. That's what it's about. It's about bringing the community together. And I think that credit unions do this better than anyone with their members. But it's very rare that we see some of the creativeness come out of it, right? Or very rare that it's talked about. So I love the fact that we're talking about this because I think it's bringing to light some of the amazing work that you're doing at your credit union. And I think we can continue to talk about more and more credit unions that are doing some incredible things. And I think that one of the things that we've seen historically with a lot of credit unions is how involved they are with giving back to the community.
Mm-hmm. Well, at the end of the day, it's all about the member. It's all about the member's community. And as long as you keep that message that those credit union values in whatever it is that you're communicating, that's good.
I completely agree. And by the way, giving back to the community is just another area in which communities need it more than ever right now. Yeah. And I think it's a primary play for a lot of credit unions if you're going to be doing what you want to do, and that's reach these audiences. You have to show that. And I think that you're seeing a generation grow up in millennials and Gen Y and Gen Z that if they don't see that, you're going to lose. Like if they don't see you do those things, you're going to lose because they're growing up with this mentality of like, oh, we need to see that you're diverse. We need to see that you're culturally significant. We need to see that you're giving back. We need to see that you have our best interests at heart. And there's a lot more vetting there, right? Because trust is gained over time. And I think now is the perfect time in this pandemic to be able to really gain the trust of a younger audience. So I know we weren't planning on talking about this, but what do you think we can do to try and gain the trust of that younger audience?
Well, the fact that credit unions are not-for-profits is more of a point from which we can come to people than I think people realize. I don't think a lot of people know that credit unions are not-for-profit. That we really aren't in it for ourselves. We're in it for the members. And if we are fiscally strong, it's benefiting the members. It's not benefiting, 5 shareholders or whatever it is. So I think that's a good point to publicize is the not-for-profit status.
Oof, I completely agree. It's not talked about enough. And I think that this goes back to the humility that I think credit unions as an organization just have as part of part of who they are, right? They don't talk about themselves enough. Like we got to bring that to life. I mean, that's what I've been trying to do in a lot of the episodes more recently with some of this podcast is y'all don't talk about yourselves enough on the great work that you guys are doing. And that's tough because like it should be talked about more. Like it is a non-for-profit, right? And there isn't anything that's gained from those that are at the executive level. It's deeper than that. So, I mean, I just think that credit unions historically don't like to sell and they don't like to sell themselves because they don't want to be seen that way. But it's also important to recognize that there's a core purpose of why a credit union was created, and that's it. And when sometimes we get away from that core, we forget that there's extreme value that can be seen there. And I think that the more that members understand that, the more likely they are to be involved in a credit union versus, a different financial institution, right?
Well, we exist to help the members and to lift their communities because that lifts up the members. So if they understand that, if we get that message across, I think we'll be golden.
Completely agree.
Or maybe silver.
Well, Cynthia, we're at time, but I want to give the listeners an opportunity to reach out to you. If anyone wanted to reach out to you to talk about some of these subjects that we've been talking about today, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, you can email me at my email address, which is ckolko@summitfcu.org. ckolko@summitfcu.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for your time today. And we appreciate you being on the podcast.